and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And in a week with lots of tough news for the community, we're going to start with the historic wins for LGBTQ artists at the Grammy Awards.
Because it was a great show and there were a lot of us, and it's more fun than all the terrible news. And I don't think we're going to discuss all the other headlines the rest of the world is discussing today. We have new news. Including that, and this is the sad part after the Grammys, many community losses this week, most notably fierce trans activist Cecilia Gentili, veteran trans and AIDS activist and my co-defendant Kathy Otter, AIDS action leader Larry Kessler, and pioneering black gay activist Tommy Doughton.
Speaker Mike Johnson appeared with a Christian nationalist who holds that the Stonewall Rebellion let loose pagan gods.
Well, of course, why not? We will have an update on our favorite right-wing couple, the Zieglers in Florida.
A victory over a GOP attempt to eliminate trans rights in Iowa.
Good and bad news from Iowa, but that was a good one. We will hear from a black lesbian in Florida who read the legislature the riot act over their racism and their anti-LGBTQ bigotry.
A transgender minister in Tennessee gave the opening prayer at the legislature, and most of the Republicans boycotted it.
Charming. CBS's Out correspondent David Bagnaud takes his Louisiana Catholic alma mater to task for homophobia.
The Nipplegate attack on gay bars in Seattle has come to a happy end.
I'll resist the jokes I could make. And talk about a happy end. No charges for the U.S. Senate staffer who had sex in the Senate hearing room that was videotaped and posted.
He did lose his job.
Yeah.
The two 15-year-olds who brutally killed a trans teen influencer in England were sentenced to life.
And Andy and I have differing opinions on FEUD, CAPOTE versus the SWANS on FX. Stay tuned for that. And Andy will review The Days of Wine and Roses on Broadway.
Don't expect a Henry Mancini song.
Okay.
All right, the Grammys,
Speaking of songs.
Well, three of the winners in the big four categories were LGBTQ women.
Can we first just say what a great show it was?
Yeah, I stuck with it.
Yeah, and Andy's not a music person, so that's a revolutionary statement on his part. But I loved it. I always love the Grammys. I think they're the best awards show every year. But a lot of people were saying, oh, this was above and beyond.
They did a great job on the In Memoriam.
Fantastic.
It's usually crap, but
it
was done so well.
We will get to that.
But I mean,
they also had great ratings. The ratings were up enormously.
And we're going to start with with two of the musical numbers. The first of which
we can't show you because they're network material.
But we will link to them in our email so that you can watch them.
If you go to cbs.com, you can watch the entire show.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was great to see Tracy Chapman back there. She was singing with Luke Combs, performing Fast Car, which she wrote back in 1989. She won for it in 1989. He did not prevail this year with his version of the song.
Well, it was very touching because he so clearly loves her and loves the song.
A big white man with Tracy Chapman, the black lesbian.
Yes, with a lot of gray hair. But he just looked at her adoringly through the song as she was singing, and he was mouthing the words that she was singing as just because he knows and loves the song. And then every time she'd glance over to him, he would sort of embarrassedly turn his head so he wouldn't be caught adoring her in that way. It's really touching, really touching. So congratulations to them. Congratulations to a beautiful performance that really swept the audience away. Everybody was involved in it. And then everybody was also involved in Joni Mitchell's performance with Brandi Carlile at her side.
Even more moving.
Well, I think it's all moving, but very moving. Brandi has really helped Joni sort of come out of retirement, helped her appear at the Newport Folk Festival.
Joni had never sung at the Grammys before.
Never. Amazing.
And there she is, she's not in the greatest of health, and she was sitting down, and Brandi was right next to her.
And they were doing Both Sides Now, and she won a Grammy for Best Folk Album.
Amazing. At 80.
Yeah.
There's hope for all of us.
But very, very wonderful. And then I am now totally swept away by Miley Cyrus, who I've just for the first time heard her song Flowers, for which she won 2 awards. And there she is, just having the time of her life with Mariah Carey. And I love this song, Flowers, so much. It's a real female empowerment song. It actually could be a male empowerment song, too. I can love me better than you can is the tagline. And we're going to link in the show note to both the official music video and her performance on the Grammys, because they were quite different and her look was quite different. But the energy in the audience, I mean, everyone from Taylor Swift to John Legend and Chrissy Teigen to Oprah on their feet, dancing, singing along, and Miley is just at the height of her powers.
And then...
and queer identified, let me
yes,
throw
Miley
that in.
gave a shout out to the gays in her acceptance.
Well, she's officially bisexual, although I read that she's got some boyfriend. I want to say...
We don't hold that against her. Then the Brandys won. Brandi Clark's Dear Insecurity, featuring Brandi Carlile, won the Grammy for Best Americana Performance.
Yeah, and there they are. And then, Allison Russell, also, these are all out queer, gay, bi people.
Allison won for Best American Roots Performance for Eve Was Black. And then she said, in accepting, to my sister, Brandi Carlile, who kicked open the doors of the industry for artists like me, she said to a cheering crowd, I love our community.
Well, good for her. And good for Brandi. And also semi-recently out as queer, Billie Eilish, with her brother Phineas, won for their Barbie song,
What Was I Made For?
Thank you.
This was Song of the Year.
Yep.
And then they give an award for Best Musical Theater Album, and it went to Some Like It Hot. There's Christian Borle and J. Harrison Ghee there. J. Harrison Ghee being non-binary, and the character basically also being either trans or non-binary in the show.
The biggest winner, actually, was Phoebe Bridgers, because with her group Boy Genius, a queer group there, they won 3 Grammys, and then Phoebe won a 4th for another collaboration she did. So she's technically the biggest winner and queer.
And the award for Best New Artist went to Out by Victoria Monet. Monet nabbed a win for the Best Rhythm and Blues album with Jaguar 2.
Cute.
Or Jaguar the Second, perhaps.
And Carla Petullo, new to me, I must admit, won for Best New Age Ambient or Chant album. That's her in the middle.
And again, you didn't see this on the show, but they gave out an award for the best recording of an opera, and it was Fire Shut Up in My Bones by Terence Blanchard, which is a gay-themed work. It went to the out conductor of the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra, Yannick Nézet-Séguin. And he also won as a pianist accompanying the famous soprano Renee Fleming for Best Classical Solo Vocal Album for Voice of Nature.
And among the posthumous Grammys, David Bowie won a Grammy for Best Music Film that came out this last year or so.
It was nice to see Tony Bennett back on stage during the In Memoriam singing, but they did a nice duet.
Well, to me, of course, the highlight of the obits was Annie Lennox doing Sinead O'Connor, Nothing Compares to You. If anything, Annie Lennox made it even more emotional than Sinead did, which is hard to do. And a whole series of performances. Stevie Wonder did Tony Bennett. Jean-Baptiste did, what's his name?
Can't help you out.
And Fantasia did Tina Turner. Here's one you'll love. Dave Chappelle won for Best Comedy Album.
I wasn't going to mention that.
No, we have to do the good and the bad. I enjoyed, the Osborne brothers, one of whom is gay, lost for Best Album, but they're fantastic. And a couple of other things. Oh, Janelle Monáe was there looking great, but did not win any of her Grammy nominations. It led me to take a look at Taylor Swift's Anti-Hero, which was nominated for a lot of things, and she did win for album. And Anti-Hero,
for the fourth time.
Well, yeah. Well, Anti-Hero is a very interesting sort of song about self-deprecation that was really, I took a look at that, interesting. And I also like the SZA music video for Kill Bill. So you watch these shows and it leads you to sometimes look up other things online. But a very, very LGBTQ year at the Grammys.
And a fantastic year for women. I mean, they don't have gendered categories anymore, and the women were sweeping all the major awards.
Well, 5 years ago, they were complaining that there were virtually no women nominated for anything, but now they have risen to the top. I was not too thrilled with Trevor Noah, who I thought was trying too hard.
Well, he talked fast.
He talked a lot at the beginning, certainly.
Okay. All right.
So
now to our sad news.
Yeah.
And we lead with one that is resonating around the community, the death of fierce trans activist and leader Cecilia Gentili, only 52 years old.
Wow.
She died February 6th. She was originally from Argentina. She came here to pursue a safer life as a trans woman, lived here undocumented for 10 years, became a sex worker, survived arrests and immigration detention. Maybe we should run the video of her and then add whatever she doesn't
couple
cover
of other things,
in this. This is with Sophie Cadle.
Usually people with my kind of history are not meant to be managing directors of anything, right? Because when you say like, undocumented, homeless, sex worker with a history of addiction, people don't expect you to be successful.
Are you guys here to get beautified or to steal my proprietary secrets?
So, yeah, my name is Cecilia Gentili, MHC, Gay Man Health Crisis, and I identify as a transgender woman.
So my first question to you would be, how have you seen transgender rights change in the previous years and right now in 2018?
The life of a trans woman of color is around 32 to 35. Being 46 and going into 47 makes me feel like I made it in life. So I've seen the state of trans rights going through different stages. We continue to work on rights for our community. Unfortunately, we've seen many attacks, the attacks of transgender people in the military, the new idea of trying to eliminate the word transgender from all the literature. There are terrible things. But I believe it's a great opportunity to put a fight. I'm nothing if I'm not a fighter.
How do you see housing and healthcare as being related in the fight to end youth homelessness?
It goes hand in hand. How can you take care of your health if you don't have a place to sleep? That's why I always think when we talk specifically about HIV, housing is prevention. Creating spaces for young folks and for folks in general that are put at high risk, creating housing for those folks is creating HIV prevention.
What about survival sex work? How does sex work relate to healthcare and homelessness?
As a former sex worker, I started working on the sex trade when I was 17 because, I was transitioning, I couldn't get a job. So the only thing that I found, that I could do to sustain myself was to do sex work, right? For many of us, sex work has kept us alive for years because we couldn't get jobs, right?
From a young age.
Yeah.
At the beginning of being kicked out of your home.
Right. The problem is that, sex work is criminalized, right? So because we are forced into sex work, we are put in positions where we are most likely to be arrested at any time, and then
Arrested or lose our lives.
Yeah, or arrested or killed or harassed.
You're a pioneer in our communities. We, as a sister and as an Afro-Latina sister, I look up to my sisters who are in positions like yours. It's what our community needs. We need to be kept visible in the conversation. We need to be brought into the tables to keep having this type of conversations.
I believe that one of the most important issues for trans youth when it comes to the road to homelessness is family acceptance. It is proven that youth that have the support of their family are most likely to be housed and have be more successful around education, employment. Whatever our ideas of success, we all deserve a shot to succeed. So I'm trying to do my best to guarantee youth and young folks to have a shot to success.
So
She really was a hero in the community, especially here in New York. She was a writer, she was an actress. She wrote a book called Faltas, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Faltas, Letters to Everyone in My Hometown Who Isn't My Rapist.
she was really a towering advocate in New York City and beyond for the rights of undocumented immigrants, sex workers, and LGBTQ people. She did a show called Red Ink about trans life. She was an actor as well. She appeared as Ms. Orlando on Pose, the television series. And she co-birthed Transmission Fest, the first all-trans music festival benefiting LGBTQ charities.
Now, another giant we lost this week, Kathy Otterston, known as Kathy Otter for many years here in New York.
Now, there she is in New York at the Metropolitan Museum, but she had a life elsewhere.
Well, let's talk about New York first. Although she died in Alaska, which is where she's been living for the last year, she took her own life at 57. And she was very prominent in a lot of movements, but it was in ACT UP that I knew her and knew her as a co-defendant as one of the St. Patrick's Six.
We have a picture of that.
Yes.
There you are.
There
and
we
there's
are.
Kathy towards the middle.
Yes, third from the left, leather jacket. We were the ones arrested inside St. Patrick's Cathedral in December of 1989 who decided to go to trial and fight our prosecution. And she was hilariously funny, very smart, and completely committed as an activist.
She died at 57. She was a survivor, however, of multiple physical attacks over the years for being gender nonconforming, including a bat attack that left her skull fractured in multiple places in 1989, which she said never completely healed.
She was involved in needle exchange
Arrested for
demonstrations, went to trial for that too. And she ended up living in Fairbanks, Alaska, where she ran for office for the Fairbanks City Council and got elected.
Exactly. She won. She said people are very, live and let live up here.
Alaska is still a wild territory, but the mayor wrote a letter when she died saying, at first I didn't think I was going to like Kathy, but she turned out to be the most wonderful, committed worker for the good of the city. And it's a real loss and a shame that she's gone. And everybody is extremely sad. We have a picture of her with her wife and kids.
They were together for about 15 years.
Yeah. But she, if you want to know more about Kathy, go to the ACT UP Oral History Project, where I just reread her interview there, and she talks a lot about how the great thing about ACT UP was that it gave the community respect for itself and gave her self-respect. And she's quite eloquent about it and talks a lot about the various actions. Kathy Otterston, at the ACT UP Oral History Project. Look that up.
And then in Massachusetts, Larry Kessler, one of the founders of the AIDS Action Committee of Massachusetts, has died at the age of 81. He led the group from the 1980s into the early 2000s. He did civil rights work and poverty work when he was in his 20s. He was on the board of Boston's Fenway Community Health Center, which is the LGBTQ health center there, when HIV/AIDS began to emerge. And he and John Stein got the AIDS Action Group going, and it became a standalone organization in '86 with him as executive director. He also founded the AIDS Walk up there, raising millions for HIV services for AIDS Action and many other organizations. In 1988, he was appointed to Reagan's National Commission on AIDS, a reminder of how long it took for Reagan to act on AIDS. He is survived by his husband.
He was an activist all his life. In fact, he, like many of us, an anti-Vietnam War demonstrator, led a demonstration at the Pittsburgh Pirates opening day against the Vietnam War. He was an advisor to Boston mayors Flynn and Menino, and ran into Ann McGuire, who we talked about last week, who just died, who was the Mayor Menino's LGBTQ liaison to the community.
The Boston Ann McGuire, not the New York Ann McGuire.
Correct.
Don't wish to alarm our viewers in New York.
But Larry Kessler, a towering figure in AIDS activism and other activism.
And then Tommy Doughton has died, a professor at Holy Cross in Worcester, Massachusetts. Now, the reason we're talking about him is back in 1966, 3 years before Stonewall, he was a co-founder of the Columbia College Student Homophile League. And in 1976, he contributed an essay on race relations in the gay movement in the anthology After You're Out, Personal Experiences from Gay Men and Lesbian Women, edited by our pals Carla J. and Alan Young. He went on to a distinguished academic career with expertise in African American history, the Holocaust, comparative genocide, and Native American studies. Boy, could we use him now. His direct ancestor was Thomas Hazard, a soldier in the Revolutionary War.
And he had indigenous ancestry, too, and was very dedicated to unearthing both Black and indigenous history in the Worcester area. A lot of history uncovered there by him.
Okay. Then we have a pioneer of evangelical feminism, Letha Dawson Scanzoni. She's died at the age of 88. Not LGBTQ herself, she co-authored with the late Virginia Mollenkott, who I believe died last year, Is the Homosexual My Neighbor? This was 1978, using scholarship to show that gay love was not a sin. In 2006, she wrote The Christian Case for Gay Marriage, but she started challenging the sexism in the evangelical Christianity in the mid-1960s. And by 1974, wrote A Biblical Approach to Women's Liberation, All That We Are Meant to Be.
A lot of giants lost this week. I have this sense of like the entire world population it's starting to accelerate its disappearance.
The great.
Is that just because of the age I am?
I think so many prominent people in our movement, because we didn't have much of a movement before Stonewall. We had a small one, and we've lost a lot of those pioneers. But now these are the people who got involved after Stonewall.
Well, I just think
except for Tommy Doughton,
across
1966.
Across the board, not just in our community, but there are a lot of people dying.
Well, as my friend Tony's father used to say, people are dying who never died before.
Excellent. Who is he, Yogi Berra? All right, well, still alive, Mike Johnson.
Oh, God. Well, he spoke at a national prayer gathering last week, sponsored by the anti-LGBTQ hate group, the Family Research Council, alongside, right next to, the infamous Jonathan Cahn, C-A-H-N, a pastor who said that the Stonewall Rebellion opened the portal to another realm, allowing a pagan god to come back to earth and cause a sexual revolution. Did you know that we had this kind of power?
It's fascinating history. I just
Khan said that these pagan gods seek to seduce the culture through sexual revolution and compel parents to sacrifice their children. I mean, how can you be a serious person and be in the presence of this kind of nonsense?
Look, I was reading up on this breakfast, and what I came to was what's happened with the National Prayer Breakfast, which has split in two. For the more moderate and the more right-wing groups. And now this is the even more right-wing group, the Family Research Council National Gathering for Prayer and Repentance.
16 members of Congress attended the event. Together they prayed to stop feminism, homosexuality, abortion rights, and alternate lifestyles. By the way, the Family Research Council is tax exempt and says it's a church.
Yeah, well, all this leads us to Florida and Christian Ziegler, our couple of the year, he and his wife Bridget. There they are. You see them every week here because we have little updates every week. We just soon stop talking about them, but the latest revelation from the police department investigations of their phones shows him trolling for lots of women for threesomes, and he's just getting in more hot water all the time.
They had a whole list,
and women, multiple women claiming
we need to hunt for someone new. They said.
Well, because a lot of women have accused him of physical abuse.
Well, the texts also confirm that Bridget was into these encounters for the women. The Sarasota School Board did vote urging her to resign. Governor DeSantis has not removed her from the Disney Purification Board.
But now every time the Sarasota School Board holds a meeting, a public open meeting, tons of people show up to yell at her and say, "Get out of there, you hypocrite, you're horrible and you're ruining our schools." And she just sits there and says, I believe in free speech. And if people want to come here and yell at me, that's up to them.
Well,
but I'm not resigning.
Disney is not being so successful in its lawsuit for free speech versus the DeSantis administration. Their suit was dismissed. They're challenging his taking away their special district thing, but they are vowing to appeal.
Yeah, the district court judge who ruled against them was a Trump appointee, so I hold out a little hope.
Much of the national news is the business about immigration reform and support for the defense of Ukraine. They went down in flames in Washington. Maybe there's new developments since after we tape this. But groups such as the ACLU and the National LGBTQ Task Force are also speaking out against the immigration bill, saying it includes Trump-era policies that will perpetuate chaos and suffering at the border.
Well, they say very explicitly the Democrats caved to the Republicans on this. The Republicans can have everything they want, and that's all
Well, apparently not everything, because they won't bring the bill up.
Well, and to which some of us say, thank God, because it is such a heinous
bill.
So
leave it all in chaos, and it's a mess.
And
it is a mess.
I would like the Democrats to find their compassion and empathy and intelligence again and realize the richness brought to this country by immigrants and start talking about that.
Absolutely. I'm totally for, I'm not going to say completely open borders, but we need their labor. I mean, Martha Teichner on CBS did a whole thing on immigration. She said the dairy farmers, without these immigrants, they're closing dairy farms.
A 13-year-old immigrant from Africa has just invented a soap that will treat skin cancer. But we want to keep these people out.
It's all politics, and that's what the Democrats are worried about. And until Democrats get power, they can't do anything.
Well, they have some power now.
Very little.
And they could be changing their rhetoric to try to educate people.
Well, someone who's giving up some power is Anise Parker. She's leaving as the head of the Victory Fund, but not until the end of the year. There she is.
Yes.
She's been doing a good job electing more and more LGBTQ people.
A lot more.
Which is what the Victory Fund does.
Yeah. She says they now support 1,270 elected LGBTQ officials, which is way up
Now,
as the world has changed around us.
the Human Rights Campaign came out with its State Equality Index, and you can go to hrc.org and look up the score in your state. And now they're doing weekly updates. There is so much there's 350 anti-LGBTQ bills in the state houses right now.
But the National Center for Transgender Equality has just come out with a long-awaited report. They surveyed, ready for this, 92,000 trans people across the country. And of course, that isn't all of them, but that's a lot. And 94% report great satisfaction with their gender transition, and their only problem is the way people treat them and the problems they have getting jobs or accessing medical care or whatever. But the National Center for Transgender Equality, go to their website and you can get this report.
And we'll put a link to that in our email.
Yeah.
In Arizona last week, they advanced a bill to require healthcare entities to provide parents access to minors' medical records, including services that do not require parental approval, such as emergency mental health treatment.
And in Florida, a district judge, Robert Hinkle, is blasting the state health agency for ignoring his order that, I'm sorry, I got lost in the middle of a sentence, against their refusing care to trans Medicaid clients. Clients weren't getting care appropriately. They go to court, they sue, the judge says, you're right. You should be getting services. He orders the state health agency to make sure they get it, and the state health agency ignores them. This is what Abbott's doing in Texas, too. They're ignoring federal orders.
It's called nullification.
Yeah.
And Florida is also advancing a bill that makes insurance coverage of gender-affirming care for adults conditional on coverage of detransition care, which should already be covered, and requires insurers to offer options that exclude coverage for gender-affirming care as part of their option package. And that passed. The bill would also require, this is what we talked about, the bill would require driver's licenses and other state-issued ID to reflect a person's sex assigned at birth rather than their gender identity.
All right, I think it's time for Nipplegate.
Well, we do have some other state news, and I think we should,
Okay.
This is good news from Florida. A bill to restrict flags that represent political viewpoints on public buildings, supported by DeSantis, stalled in the state Senate after he came out for it. And there's a lot of concerns about it. And of course, a Democrat testified and said, look, race, gender, sexual orientation, and religion are not political viewpoints unto themselves, and we should be as inclusive as possible.
Because that's what the law prohibited, and it's clearly targeted at pride flags, but it says only the U.S. flag and the Florida flag can be flown on public property. And then someone went to one of the legislators and said, well, what if there's some visiting dignitary from another country and we want to honor them by flying their flag? He said, oh, we can make an exception for that.
Or what about the French club? If they want to fly the tricolore. Did I say that right? I don't know.
Yes,
All right.
you did.
All right, now we can talk about Nipplegate.
Okay. Seattle, Washington. We've told you about recent raids on gay bars, and they're cracking down. And
They have a law that says there can be no nudity or lewdness in a place that serves alcohol. So they cite, they did raid these places. They didn't close them, but they cited them, and now everybody's up in arms about it.
And one of them was for a bartender who was bearing a nipple.
That's it. Did we show?
I would think
there it is. That's his nipple. This is the guy.
Doesn't every bartender bear a nipple?
I mean, and how is that lewdness? I mean, my God, just not wearing a top. I mean,
well, it's not tremendously attractive in
and
that
some
photo.
some patrons were walking around in jock straps, which again, it doesn't sound like nudity. But in the face of public outrage, they're looking to change the law in the state, and the state liquor and cannabis board suspended enforcement of the lewd conduct rule and its participation in Seattle's joint enforcement team. So, folks, protest works.
And the bar is celebrated by holding Free the Nipple events
They did.
last weekend.
They had a good time.
Yes.
All right, a follow-up on the gay sex in the Senate hearing room scandal. The Democratic staffer got fired, but police found no evidence that a crime was committed.
Fascinating.
Though they're willing to look at new evidence if there is any. The staffer, Aiden, we have a picture of him, Aiden Zuropski, did not cooperate with the investigation, but was let go from Senator Ben Cardin's staff.
The Capitol Police said that it's not illegal to videotape yourself having sex in a Senate hearing room.
All right.
It may be against Capitol policy, they said. But none of the participants would talk, so that impeded their investigation.
Well, speaking of scandals, the Women's Tennis Association is close to a deal with the Saudis to host their season-ending tour final. Billie Jean King says going to Saudi Arabia is a way to bring about change. But tennis stars Chris Evert and Martina Navratilova are deploring the collaboration's sellout, saying that the values of the WTA and the Saudis are in stark contrast.
Certainly are. Well, at least they haven't sold the WTA to the Saudis.
Well,
Will that be the next step?
Well, you know, they started out with those Virginia Slims. That was a compromise.
Oh, God, yes. All right, Iowa.
Yep.
This is excellent news from Iowa. Then we'll get to the bad news from Iowa. But first, a House subcommittee composed of 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat killed a proposed bill that would delete gender identity from the civil rights law.
Even the House Republican Majority Leader condemned the measure.
A trans politician, elected official, testified against it. Hundreds of people showed up to demonstrate. We have a picture there.
Well, the trans official, Amy...
they're celebrating.
Amy Wichtendahl said, "You seem to think being trans is some kind of ideology, so I will say it plain. There is no such thing as transgenderism. There is only transgender people. We are human beings, and we do not deserve to be this abuse from our government."
There are plenty of other anti-trans laws in effect in Iowa, and we'll get to one of those in a minute.
Okay.
But meanwhile, we want to go to Tennessee.
Yeah.
A trans chaplain from the Church of Christ, Dayron Johnson, was asked to give an opening prayer at the legislature, as so many other pastors do. So she showed up and she gave the prayer, and here's a little video of her doing that.
It's something I've done at VA meetings, all types of spaces. So this is just one of the things that I do in my role as a chaplain. So it seemed like a pretty obvious way to demonstrate that we are as much a part of the community as anyone else. I'm sure it's pretty unique. I'll let other people do the history work on that. But I'm just honored to have the opportunity, asking those there to think about the ways that in the work of being a representative, they're brought here, they're elected, called to come to this space to represent the voices of many, many, many beyond themselves. I'm coming here in good faith. One of the things that I've really tried to be intentional about is not to make this a moment, but to meet the moment that it is. And I hope that others hear that, whether it's representatives on the floor or others elsewhere, that I'm really just trying to do the work of being honored with an invitation to serve in this role in this one small way. From childhood lessons and their morals, my own mother repeated many times that solutions most often come from more voices, not fewer. Speak through the work of those called to this house, and speak through the voices of all they are sent here to represent. In honoring those who have helped their communities, hear their voices, hear our prayer.
Where were you guys, Paul? Where were you, Paul?
How you doing?
Hey, where were you guys? Where were you guys?
Go, man.
Where were you, Jason?
How are you?
Yeah.
Hey, man.
Where were you?
I had a meeting, ran a little bit over.
You only talk to the people who are there, right? And so if other folks decide not to show for whatever reasons, you know, I'll let them have their reasons, right? And I'll just try to do what I can, and hopefully people were willing to, like part of my message said, willing to let go of the things that might help them and let go of the things that keep them from maybe hearing a different perspective and a different good word.
She is infinitely patient.
She's a pastor.
And the Republicans are, you know, where's your devotion to God, your God, and to basic manners?
So those were the Republicans who made themselves late to the chamber so they wouldn't have to sit there and listen to her and give her any respect. And they're still, the Republicans in Tennessee in the legislature, they're still going after those 2 black legislators who they threw out for being rude because they questioned them.
Yes.
They're on the verge of being thrown out again. And they want a new rule that would prevent them from being sent back immediately by their constituents. They're passing all sorts of anti-LGBTQ stuff.
It's called fascism.
It's sad and
it's fascism.
Enraging.
It is fascism.
And a simple petri dish of experimentation for what the Republicans will do if they take over the country.
Exactly. They have a plan. All right. Somebody who's fighting back is CBS News' David Bagnaud. You've seen him on the news. He went to his old Catholic high school.
That's him in Puerto Rico, Haiti?
Well,
one of those disasters.
He went back to Louisiana with his news crew. He was going to film at Turling's High School. He was going to do a piece on his former English teacher, Josette Surratt, who helped him understand himself as gay. The school's chancellor, Reverend Kyle White, didn't want the students to get the impression that being gay was okay, so he said, you can't film in the school. But let me just say something, kids. Being gay is okay.
He had to, I think he originally did the interview, but after hours so that no one else would be in the school. And then the principal went after him even after that and said, don't come back here. We don't like you. You're
well, you know, I tried to
evil.
Advance Chaminade High School, which had a lot of, you know, closeted gay teachers, and they wanted none of it.
In upstate New York, in Tonawanda, a suburb of Buffalo, a pizzeria there, TC Wheelers, has agreed to pay a severely harassed employee, a trans man, Quinn Gambino, $25,000 and institute full staff training on LGBTQ
well,
issues.
The owner told a co-worker, I'd just say she because that's what she is. And he equated being trans to pedophilia. So the EEOC got involved with all this under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. When they were called for comment by Gay City News, whoever answered the phone said, we don't talk to anybody about anything.
And in South Dakota, the Transformation Project, which is a trans group, got $300,000 and an apology when the state canceled a contract that they had with the group.
In Skaneateles, am I saying it right? Skaneateles, New York, a mom, represented by Alliance Defending Freedom, the right-wing groups, is suing the district for failing to notify her when her child started to transition. New York state policy protects LGBTQ students, and the Ed Department policy is that schools should accept a student's gender identity based on a student's preference and does not require permission, letters from professionals, or other proofs. The parent says her religious rights were violated. Nothing about, of course, the kids' rights.
Yeah, I can imagine back to high school, middle school days, I didn't want everything reported to my parents.
Please.
I almost got kicked out of high school for smoking in the basement.
And,
cigarettes.
The most trouble I got into was in, what grade was I in? Second grade. And they wrote on my report card, too much fooling around. Boy, did I get hell at home for that. What does this mean, my father? Because I was basically a good kid, you know, a nerd, you know, whatever. But I got in trouble for that.
Well, when I was in third grade in elementary school, the class had made a fort, a model of a fort. And somehow, in the end, it was a decision of who would end up with the fort, me or Billy Williams. And I said, well, let's flip a coin. And the teacher lost her mind. There will be no gambling in this class, Anne. And I said, well, Miss Bates let us flip a coin in second grade, and she took me by the arm and marched me next door to the second grade classroom where Miss Bates was and said, Anne says you let them do this. And Miss Bates sold me out and would not stand up for me.
Gambling? I'm shocked. Shocked. All right.
That made me a cynic for the rest of my life. After
Well,
Miss
there you
Bates
are.
sold
That
me
explains
out.
it. That
Yep.
explains it.
Yep.
Well, but let's talk about what happened at the University of Iowa.
Okay. They were demonstrating against a detransitioner who had been invited to speak as a guest speaker. So they held a big demonstration. 7 protesters were arrested, all trans. Nobody else was arrested. None of the rest of the cis students were arrested, just the trans protesters.
We had a picture. Did we get that picture?
Yeah, we do have that.
There they are.
Yeah, there's the protest.
Well, but if you want to see a real protest, let's go to Florida again, where a black lesbian named
Yolanda Porcio, sorry, Pourciau,
spoke to the legislature.
Sociology professor, motivational speaker. She was speaking against the proposal for an anti-trans bill on February 1st at the start of Black History Month.
This is fierce.
I usually don't get up for things like this, but I decided to wake up so that I could share a little bit. Just wanted to see if you could kind of imagine what it's like to be Black, lesbian, working class, and a woman in this state. I decided to wake up and come before you and just say, ouch, ouch. I feel like I'm in a playground and bullies are just beating me upside the head. You're not wanted, you're not worth it, you're no good. I feel like I live in a state that if I'm not in mainstream, I should go away altogether. This is the most heartbreaking experience that I'm having. No defense, defenseless. On the first day of Black History Month, I stand for freedom, freedom of expression for all Floridians. I stand for freedom. LGBTs do not need conversion therapy. We need respect, love, and a return of dignity.
Yolanda Porcio.
Hero.
Fantastic.
Just tremendous.
Yep.
All right. In Bel Air, Maryland, we told you about how trans activist Megan Lewis, we have her picture, was killed after getting into an argument with Brian Decen, D-E-C-E-N, 47, who called her sir. He drove away. When she followed him, he shot her dead. Now, he was first charged with like some kind of second-degree thing. He's now charged with first-degree murder, held without bail. Her supporters gathered at the county courthouse January 8th to remember her and call for justice. Aya Dammons of Baltimore Safe Haven said they're letting killers think it's okay to kill transgender individuals.
And a lot of this is because they're censoring all education and they're just driving people apart. The American Bar Association House of Delegates, by unanimous voice vote, adopted a resolution that there should be no ban on teaching about race or gender in schools across the country.
Big bans on teaching about anything. I mean, I want people to learn it all, the good and the bad. All right, are we on to international news?
No, first we're going to memorialize one more person.
Oh, right.
From New Jersey, the Reverend Norman Cansfield, who died at 83, a straight ally. He's there with his wife on the left and his daughter on the right. He was the former president of the New Brunswick, New Jersey Theological Seminary. In 2004, long before it was legal, he performed a marriage ceremony for his daughter and her wife, both of whom are ministers.
She's a fire department chaplain.
Yeah, his daughter Anne and her wife Jennifer. He was deposed from his position by the General Synod of the Reformed Church of America, reinstated 8 years later in 2012 when they evidently got educated. But he stood up very, very bravely as an ally and obviously loved his daughter and her wife. A lot of pictures of all of them together.
Okay. All right, international news. The remorseless teens who brutally stabbed a trans girl, we have a picture of her, Brianna Gay, G-H-E-Y, to death in the north of England last year, have been convicted and identified and sentenced to life in prison. Scarlett Jenkinson and Eddie Ratcliffe, the last time you're going to hear those names, now 16, will serve a minimum of 22 and 20 years respectively. They were thrill killers in the mode of Leopold and Loeb. Brianna was a web influencer with thousands of followers on TikTok. Jenkinson cultivated a friendship with Brianna before the murder. The murder was luridly planned. One of their text messages, "I want to see if it will scream like a man or a girl." The killer told a shrink that she found the killing exciting.
They were very cold-blooded in their planning and talked about various possible victims before picking Brianna. And they were like 15 at the time.
When they did it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sociopaths.
Yes.
In Canada, in Alberta, Premier Danielle Smith has announced new rules for trans youth under 17. They're not allowed to have surgery. They don't anyway. Hormones need permission from parents, doctor, psychologist for anyone 16 to 17. And new names or pronouns need permission and parental notice. How much more control are we going to exercise?
Taiwan has its first out legislator. She is Huang Ji, 31 years old, of the ruling Democratic Progressive Party. She's been a city councilor in Kaohsiung. In this contest, she faced attacks for being LGBTQ and for being young.
Yes, that seems to be their main complaint. She's too young.
She's a former journalist. She's now the youngest member of parliament at 31. Says there's much to do to advance LGBTQ rights, including revising the Assisted Reproduction Act to include single women and same-sex families. They have same-sex marriage in Taiwan.
Hey, Miley Cyrus is 31. She's doing okay. I'd put her in the legislature.
She's like the former Disney star, right?
Yes, Hannah Montana, but she has grown up. In Russia, a court convicted 2 people and charged one for displays of signs of extremist organizations because he posted a rainbow flag online and wore rainbow flag earrings. Actually, I'm not sure whether that's
we have a good number of viewers in Russia from the reports that we get, and
they're subject to fines and detentions for any public display of a rainbow flag in Russia is now really criminal behavior.
All right.
And in Florida. Actually, we just stopped it. And in Finland, on February 11th, next week, there will be a presidential runoff between the former prime minister, who's leading, and the former foreign minister, out gay Pekka Haavisto, 65 years old, who's a DJ also in life. So watch for the Finland presidential election.
A DJ like our associate producer, Bill Ballman.
Yes.
Okay. AIDS news. Today, February 7th, when we're taping, is National Black HIV AIDS Awareness Day. highlighting the disproportionate impact of HIV on black communities and obviously urging people to get tested and treated.
And one thing that'll be easier to do in California is to get PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, from pharmacists directly.
Or PEP, or post-exposure prophylaxis.
No longer need a prescription. You do need to be HIV tested to make sure you're negative, because you can't take this if you're HIV positive. And you should be tested for sexually transmitted infections along the way. Governor Newsom just signed this.
This is all done by Scott Wiener, the senator out there. And, you know, there are still 4,000 HIV infections in California every year.
All right. And in our last 3 minutes, we will go back to entertainment news. So you liked...
Well, look, I haven't been a fan of Ryan Murphy's series for a while, but
I have.
FEUD, Capote versus the Swans on FX, I think it was pretty laugh-out-loud funny at times, disturbing at others, and spectacularly cast, I think. I thought Tom Hollander was terrific as Truman, Capote, and all the women, Naomi Watts, Diane Lane, Chloe Sevigny, Demi Moore,
Sevigny,
okay. You know, playing the society dames that he seduced, though not sexually, of course, and then betrayed. It also features the great director Joe Mantello as Capote's partner Jack Dunphy, and Russell Tovey. All these guys are all out gay as Truman's rough trade, John O'Shea. And it's Treat Williams' last role as Bill Paley. It's directed by gay Gus Van Sant and written by gay John Robin Bates.
I thought the first episode was completely dreary. I think
I had a great time.
You had your turn.
Okay.
My turn. I think the Capote character is almost unwatchable. I thought the second episode picked up when the women got together to band against him. I do like the women in the show, obviously. But we haven't seen episode 3, and there are going to be a total of 8,
I think.
Okay. So maybe, I did think the second episode was better than the first, but he liked the first better than the second. Make your own decisions.
We're going to rename the show Crossfire. On Broadway, young Joe Locke, the star of Heartstopper, we have a picture of him, the gay teen drama from the UK on Netflix, made his Broadway debut, taking over the role of Tobias in Sweeney Todd, now co-starring Aaron Tveit. I might have said his name wrong, I apologize, and Sutton Foster. They will run through May 5th at the Lunt-Fontanne.
I saw Kokomo City on Showtime, the documentary about 4 trans people, an hour and a quarter, riveting, really, really good. Kokomo City, and smart, funny, tragic, angry. It's won a lot of awards. Really, look up Kokomo City.
The Days of Wine and Roses, about an alcoholic couple, is now a musical starring Kelly O'Hara and Brian Darcy James as lovers whose real best friend is booze. It's a tragic hour and 45 minutes witnessing their journey from fun to rock bottom to, well, you have to see the show to see what happens. It's more like an opera than a traditional musical, but it's, you know, a lot of gay people involved. I would recommend it. It's an ordeal.
The right wing is freaking over Alexander, the Making of a God on Netflix, a documentary, and we're done, and we'll see you next week.